the Artisans of Fashion Podcast, empowering artisans, preserving traditions, and reviving beauty.
Welcome to the first episode of the Artisans of Fashion Podcast. My name is Lalita Lowe and I'm your host. Today I'm very honoured to be talking with a really special guest, J.H Cutler, a distinguished figure in the realm of bespoke tailoring. John Handel Lawson Cutler is a 74-year-old bespoke tailor, and until very recently, he was a custodian of J.H Cutler, a prestigious fourth-generation tailoring establishment that was in his family since 1884. Before handing the business over to his protege, Sam Hazelton, he was the managing director of J.H Cutler. John is most known for his incredible creativity and his skills as a master cutter. A master cutter blends artistry with precision. In bespoke tailoring, a master cutter is highly skilled in creating custom patterns and cutting fabric precisely to a client's measurements. They ensure perfect fit and style, translating unique body shapes and personal preferences into elegant, well-fitting garments. Under John's guidance, J.H Cutler has dressed some of the most influential men in Australian history, from politicians to celebrities. Their approach combines the timeless skills of Savile Row with a commitment to personal service and the finest quality materials. John's contributions to the fashion industry were recognised with the Medal of the Order of Australia in 2021. In this interview, we cover a lot of ground. In the beginning, John shares his early influences and coming into the family business, and then he talks about his skills and artistry as a cutter and working with fabrics. After that, John shares a lot of stories about his different clients and the beautiful relationships that he established over the years. So now let's delve into the world of artisanal craftsmanship and bespoke tailoring. Welcome, J.H Cutler. Thank you for being open for me coming to talk with you, and I really look forward to us meeting. And I know you have so many stories to share, and I know you have so much experience with varied customers, and I'm really, really interested to hear about your process because that's important to me in terms of how garments and clothing of worth is made and how it's valued by the customer. So I'd love to hear from you, your view on artisanship, what that means to you. Yeah, your take. What does it mean to be an artisan, and do you consider yourself an artisan?
Yeah, I couldn't not, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
It's been my whole life. I never remember having a dream of anything else. From a young boy, because I used to go with my father into the shop on after school or on the weekends and watch him and watch the other tradesmen working, and it just was a part of my growing up and a part of my DNA, I suppose you'd say. Mm-hmm. And also, it was at a time when I started in the early 60s, when I was very young, 16 years of age, and other people weren't doing trades. Mm-hmm. I did quite well at school, at Sydney Grammar School, and I was encouraged to go to university and do medicine or law or something else like the rest of my friends, and I did quite well at school. But I knew what I had my passion for, and some of the teachers wanted me to go and do other things. Others were saw my passion and vision and encouraged me to leave school early and follow that road. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad that they did, and I'm so glad that I did. I wasn't forced into it in any way. There was no pressure from family. Mm-hmm. It was just what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I knew that the cutter was the person who had the control of a tailoring business, because that's the person the client wants to see. He doesn't care who runs the business or who does the books. That's who's going to cut my suit, and that's the one I want the relationship with. So I insisted with my father that I'd only join the firm and take that road if I would end up being the head cutter. So I wasn't as interested really in running business and money and legal stuff. I just wanted to get my teeth into the passionate side of things.
And so, like, what was it about being a cutter that you loved the most? I mean, I'm sure you would have been exposed to it a lot before you even kind of realised that that's what you wanted to do. Was there something in particular that drew you to it? Or was it more just the
I think my father was a very good example of dressing. He was very old school. Went to England when he was before the war. He was in England when the war broke out, Second World War. But he was always dressed right to the end. He wasn't outrageous. He wasn't colourful, but he was all about quality. And he always had a lovely cravat and always wore a lovely velvet jacket in the evening, and instead of a dinner suit he'd wear a blue velvet jacket with black trousers, and his ties and waistcoats and hats and overcoats and things, and he was always just an example to me that I grew up with observing and following. I mean, when I was a teenager I was in a rock band playing drums, and I've got photos of that, and I'm wearing a tweed jacket and flannel trousers, and all the other guys are in ripped jeans and t-shirts. Yeah. So just part of my DNA. Yeah. I never remember it being any different.
Right. And what did your father wear around the house on the weekends? Was he always?
Well, he'd come home from work and change, and put on maybe a dressing gown or something a bit more casual than a suit. But often it'd be a jacket or a waistcoat or something. Get dressed for dinner.
So it sounds like he was always well finished, like always elegant.
And you could tell caring about presentation, and not only comfort, but and there was no one else particularly there, but he just dressed because that's what you did.
And I can imagine from
rubbed off
from his, it's because this is a fourth generation business. All that history of that appreciation was in the way he approached it, and that's what you experienced and took on. But I can imagine that not everybody would take it on. So I'm interested to know what it was.
But it wasn't spoken about.
Right.
It weren't I didn't grow up in the era where parents necessarily talk to children about things. This is the way you do it or not. It was just observing. Yeah. So I'm thankful for that, and I did get to travel worldwide very early. I went to London when I was 18, after 2 years in the business. I'd worked after school for 2 years, half the day in the workroom and half the day in the shop, so cleaning and vacuuming and cleaning the dust away and selling shirts and ties and bits and pieces and a bit of bookwork. So, and then when I turned 18, I went to London for 3 years.
And what did you do?
Went to a fabric house at Dormeuil in London and learnt a bit about fabric.
And your grandfather?
My father worked there and my grandfather as well.
Yeah.
So in the late 30s and the turn of the century. And I was there in the late 60s. And then I also went at night to the Tailor and Cutter Academy and did a cutting course, which I have a diploma for cutting gentlemen's tailor-made garments.
And were you the first in the family to formally study anything like that? Were the skills generally passed down?
Well, obviously the original founder, J.H Cutler, was taught by his mother in Ballarat for Gold Rush in the 60s, probably 1860s. His son, he moved to Sydney and opened the business. He was taught, my grandfather was taught by his father, as far as I know, but he was a cutter. He was a very accomplished cutter, very well sought after cutter, very good cutter, quite a reputation. But he was also a businessman. So he had clients who ended up as directing, as a director of their boards and things like that. So he had both sides of it. My father, unfortunately, in his later teenage years, lost a thumb in an accident, and he wasn't able to sew or to cut because he had no right thumb. And so he spent his life running the business, knew about cloth and knew about style and things, and was able to advise people, but not to do the practical work himself. So he employed people.
So who took over the bean cutter at that point? Was
Well,
that when you came in, or?
No. Well, I was long after that. My grandfather would have died in the 60s, early 60s, 62 or so. And from then until I took over the cutting when I was 23, I started when I was 23, 4, 5, I took over the cutting really, and took over the business at 27. But my father employed people. There was one man, Jack Fox, who was with us from when he was a young boy and worked with my great-grandfather, and he was taught cutting, and he was our cutter. And he went up almost until I came on. Something happened, and we employed someone else for a short while, a couple of years while I was in England. Then I took over when I came back.
And so did you learn from him?
Not really. I learned I went to East Sydney Tech and did a cutting course when I was 16 for a couple of years, and our cutter was the head teacher. Then I read books and learned from other people, other tailors, and then I went to England to the academy and did a cutting course there. And you learn by making mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's
the only way to learn. So I've made a lot of mistakes, and I learned a bit by doing it.
And what was it like for you when you first came back? What did you get thrown in the deep end? Did you start with everything, or did you just start with one aspect in particular?
I was thrown in at the deep end.
Right.
I all of a sudden had to do everything. And it was, I must say, can you imagine, you're a successful businessman, you're the head of your company, you're the managing director of BHP or whatever it might be, or a politician or whatever, and you go to, Cutler, yes, they make good suits, I go and see them, and they walk in the door and greeted by me, a 23-year-old spotty-nosed kid, and they say, I want to see the cutter, please. Yes, sir, that's me. No, the head cutter. Yes, sir, that's me. And so I had to get over the trauma of having to front people with confidence and say to them, don't judge me by what I look like, judge me by what I do and what I produce. And I did have a real problem as a young man dealing with that and some of the feelings that went along with that. But eventually I was very confident and just had to laugh at them.
It's the best place to be. So what do you feel like, what do you feel it was that enabled you to talk to them with that confidence? Was it your passion for the actual craft?
I really believed in what it was possible to do and what I could do. I'd never been in a place in my life where I'd dreamt of anything else, or I never doubted that I could achieve what I wanted to achieve.
So important.
very much a matter of self-belief, just in something very specific. I was only interested in the best I could do, the best of quality, the best way of doing things. So it wasn't compromised to make a profit or anything. It was just, look, that's what I do. This is how I do it. There is no better way. I'll do the best I can for you. What it costs, it costs. It was never a financial issue. Mm-hmm. You know, if they didn't want to pay with the time it took to do it, well, I wouldn't do it. Yeah. So it's being focused, being passionate about what you want. I always say to people, tailoring isn't the sort of thing you can do unless you're passionate. You won't succeed.
And why is
it's
it,
too hard.
What is it about it that you need the passion for? What are the elements that...
Well, it's too hard to learn something that is so repetitive and so painful. Your back, you know, you're sitting in a chair, you're sewing and you're going like this thousands of times, and people just give up. You know, people come and even in days not so long ago, someone go, I want to be a tailor, I want to come and learn. And I've had so many would-be apprentices that last about 3 months. Oh, this is too hard, my back's sore. And I go, oh, sorry, unless you do the hard yards, you can't do it. You have to know what to do and you have to do it. If you don't want to do that, forget it. So that's what I say, you have to be passionate to get through that.
Right.
Like a chef, you know, you've got to learn how to cut the vegetables.
And there's
You know, and take a couple of fingers off at the same time. Same sort of thing. And then you've got to have dreams. You know, if you talk about fashion or you talk about style, I prefer to talk about style and about classics. You've got to, or I had to have dreams about things. And then I often say to my new clients that my job in life is to turn dreams into realities in terms of clothing and appearance and presentation. And so if you haven't got a dream, I've got plenty. So present them with a dream. Yes.
And how do you draw out that, because everyone is so unique, when they come to you, you know, you have to draw out what they're really looking for. So how do you go about that one day?
Oh, well, you sit them down.
Yep.
And you say, why do you come to me? You put the question back onto them. Why are you coming to me? What is it you think you're going to get from me, or what are you expecting? What do you do for work, and is it important for you to fit in with your colleagues and with the mould of a lawyer or the mould of an accountant or whatever it might happen to be, or an artist or a sportsman or whatever it might be. So you get into their psyche of what they expect and what they want, how they want to appear before other people, and whether they're worried about other people criticising their appearance, or whether they're very much an individual and want to portray that.
Right.
So you start to learn. It doesn't take long. When you do it all the time, you can almost tell by when people walk in the door. It just comes automatically to me, and then asking the right questions like that, I form an idea and then I present that idea to them. Oh, so I've asked you why you're coming to me. What I hear you saying is you're coming to me because you want to blah, 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 whatever. And then you build up that rapport of, yes, let's go on this journey together. A bespoke tailor is one who works with an individual, one person working with someone else to achieve the result that the client wants.
Right.
It's no use me coming up with something that the client doesn't want, otherwise what's the use of it? You know, it's not my job as a bespoke tailor to say, this is fashion, this is what you have to wear, when I know instinctively it won't suit
They're
them.
not going to wear it or it won't suit them.
Yeah. So it's one person, it's a tradesman working with a client to achieve the result that the client wants. That's what bespoke tailoring is. Having the skill to produce it, and the dreams and the ability to cut and design and all that, but mainly to get inside the client's head. And I think that's been my greatest success in my work all my life, is to be able to get on with people, be able to relate to people, whether they're the Prime Minister and you're in the hallowed halls, or if you're dealing with a barrow boy whose, daughter's getting married and wants something to appear, And I've made for the lot. All sorts.
I can imagine that all of that conversation and knowledge about what they're really looking for informs even the smallest details that you put into the garment, like even...
Yes, I often give them alternatives. And when I'm taking an order, I'll write down, okay, well, let's talk about buttons. Are we going to make it a 1 button or a 2 button or 3 button, or what do you think? And they say, well, what do you think? And blah, blah, blah. And I talk through the different issues about what that means. A 1 button is really for a formal garment like a dinner suit. 2 buttons, 3 buttons, and you've got vents, and you've got plain backs, and you've got cuffs and button cuffs, and then you've got shape, whether you want something close fitting and showing off your body, or if you want to hide your body and have something that's got its own shape. Because you don't have to, you can follow somebody's shape and bring that out, but at the same time you can construct a shape using the canvases and everything inside to create a shape that's not the person, but the person wants to be. Wider shoulders, the appearance of a thinner waist by making the top bigger, and sort of thing.
And so what's the canvas? You talk about the canvas inside. That's the inner shell, is that?
The inner shell, it's like, if you're building a building, it's like the scaffolding. It's like the framework that you drape other things over. Like putting up a tent, you've got to have your poles and that to throw your bit of canvas over. So that's a simplistic way of putting it, but the canvas is various types of canvas in different layers, either a woolen canvas or sometimes linen, sometimes quite soft and flexible, other times quite severely strong and out there. Then you have around the chest area often a horsehair, which is very springy, like horsehair. Or it is horsehair.
And what's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of it being the horsehair?
The purpose of that is it's springy, and it's able to create chests and shapes with something underneath, it doesn't collapse. And so you're creating with seams and darts in the canvases, you can create shapes and things. So the thing is, you build the shape before you drape the cloth over it.
So you create that canvas after you've taken their measurements?
Yes, the first part of the making. Once I've cut a pattern, each client has their own cardboard pattern, and so I create a pattern after I've taken the measurements, spoken with the client to understand what he wants. Then I'll take a pencil and a piece of cardboard and draw the pattern. It's creating a 3D thing on a flat surface using darts and things. So that's my skill, what I can do. Trousers, waistcoat, and anything. And so once you've done that, then you get the fabric, you shrink the fabric well so it doesn't shrink during the making, and then you cut it, and then you cut a canvas and work out from the pattern what shape of canvas you want, and create the canvas first and then put the fabric over it, first fitting. Normally do 2 or 3 fittings. So, and then you do a fitting and you sort of say, well, okay, let's make it a bit longer, let's I think we need another ½ inch around that waist or whatever. So,
or take it off.
So it's quite many clients, they come in not knowing what to expect, and I have some clients who actually buy clothes for other people, for a present, or people at work, or good friend, and they'll buy something for them because they wouldn't spend the money on themselves,
Right.
but they don't know what it is. And so they'd buy them a suit so they have the experience of going through the process.
Wow.
And once they've done that, they're hooked for life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So do they bring their friends in for that
Yeah,
process?
or send them in, make
Right.
an appointment.
That's so interesting, isn't it?
I have got a lot of people like that.
And what do you think it is about that for them not to want to do that for themselves? Is that they value the other person?
They do, but they also cherish our relationship, mine and theirs together, because we start as a new client, give it 5 or 10 years, they might become very good friends. And you socialise and make clothes for them and become a whole part of their life. So that's, it's not only about creating a product, it's about relationship.
Beautiful.
And so my life has been one of relationship. And what you get from that, how it feels for someone to be really happy with something and that you've created from nothing. And it's a wonderful feeling and makes life worthwhile.
And because it's it requires so much of a process, you're going along that process together for that
Yes.
whole time. So you're
Well,
discovering
it's more complicated than that because it's not just my expertise.
right.
I've got coat makers and trouser makers and waistcoat makers, alteration hands, shirt makers, and we all have to work together. I'm a cutter, I'm a designer, I wouldn't call myself a salesperson, but I'm someone who can understand what people want and make that happen. So I don't consider myself a salesperson. Some would disagree, but I've always been able to share my concepts, verbalise what people are trying to achieve, even if they don't know, and help that process. But then I also have to have the relationship with my coat makers, my tradespeople,
Right.
and I have to know, who's the best and how to keep them employed and how to help them improve and how to understand what their issues and problems are and employing people and families and you name it. And so it becomes a lot more than just that small thing. So I have to be able to trust that my coat maker knows what I mean when I say I want to do the chest like that, or I want this, or this figure, this guy's a paraplegic, he's in a wheelchair, that we've got to do this, and have them trust that I know what I want and be able to advise them and guide them in the way of construction.
And did it take you a while to get to that ability to communicate in that way and to...
Well, to have the confidence of experience. You don't have experience to start with, you just have to have bravado, I suppose. You can just say, look, I can do this, I am going to do this.
And this is the point in the podcast where we will take a short pause, because during the actual recording we experienced some technical difficulties and the recording actually stopped. So as we go back into the conversation, you'll hear us reflecting on what we had been saying. And so now I hope you enjoy the rest of the conversation with the wonderful J.H Cutler. So...
What was I saying, Dormeuil?
We're talking about Dormeuil and the
Yes, I've got
buying process.
this book, which I think I have in my book, but it's where we bought fabric from Dormeuil Frere. I think it was 1903 or 1904. Went back to last century before last, buying from the same people I'm buying from today.
That's tradition, isn't it?
And my father worked there, my grandfather worked there, I worked there, learning about cloth. And that's fantastic. I've got a couple of posters on the wall where they've sent me congratulations on 130 years of joint business. sort of thing. Yeah.
And that's again, like you say, it's all about the relationships, isn't it?
Yes.
And they would understand you, they would be able to show you fabrics that they think you would like.
But also come up with things that maybe they wouldn't be so inclined to show other people, because I know what I'm talking about and I know what I have had and what they have had.
Right. What's some of the most unique or special fabrics that you remember? Or maybe they weren't that special, but they stood out for you, fabrics that you really
There was a
enjoyed
cloth, I remember Dormeuil used to make a cloth many years ago. It was my father's favourite fabric for summer. And it was called Magic.
Okay.
And it was a mohair and wool mixture. Very lightweight for those days, about 7 ounces per square yard. But it was very open weave. It was highly twisted, the yarn, and when it was woven, it was very open weave.
Right.
Dad used to say you could read a newspaper through it. Take your trousers off and put it on the newspaper and you could read through the newspaper.
Gee.
And just let the breeze through. But it was springy, so it hardly crushed, very lightweight, perfect for Sydney. They made that for quite some time.
Was it
And
popular?
they still make a fabric in mohair and wool called Magic, but it's nothing like, it's just using it to sell something else, I think. It's
Right.
not what it was. Yeah.
And would that be a fabric that would still work today if they were making
Oh,
it?
absolutely. I'd love it. Yeah. But technology, there are a lot of other things now that have come up, you know. They're using a lot more silk with wool, silk and wool, silk, linen and wool, things that were traditionally quite crushy, but have been done in such a way with natural fibres that it's practical as well.
And is that also because our lives have become more, people are looking for more trans-seasonal pieces, or they're wearing the same thing for longer? Is that part of lifestyle? Or?
Yeah, it's also fabric houses want to flex their creativity, their muscle in making something different, something special, you know, a fleece from a bullock out in somewhere, or, you know, something in Mongolia or Peru, or just very unusual, special things that are one-off things. I love one-off. I'm all about one-off. That's all I do.
Yeah, like that's the nature of your business.
You know, I only do one thing for one person. That's me. Yeah.
So when your clients would choose a fabric, did that mean that other people didn't use that fabric, or there were different levels?
I have had people ask me, if I have that, can I have it uniquely for me?
Wow. Yep.
I say, well, I can't talk about other people making it, but we could have a little agreement that I put a cutting of your fabric in my book and say, not available for anyone else.
Amazing.
I have done that, yeah. But it's such, and my contact with the fabric houses is such, that I can have fabrics made to my design and colour. So I can design a fabric. It's maybe a business suiting in a navy blue, but with the client's initials through it, or name, or linings with photographs. You know, a wedding suit with the lining of the girl's, the bride's photo and the lining.
On the inside.
Yeah, all sorts of unusual. As I said, you know, you're only limited by your creativity. You're only limited. You can do anything. You're only limited by your own imagination and creativity. Yeah.
And did you was that always there in you from the beginning? Did you always have a vision for things? Could you always see it even when you started working in the business?
Yeah. I think it grew on me as I realised I could do it, and I didn't have to follow fashion, and I didn't have to follow what other people were doing. I could do my thing, and that's what I got a reputation for. I think. I don't know. People think what they think, and I don't mind what they think. I just love what I'm doing.
Right, and you find the clients that you can really work well together. You know, and you establish those relationships when they understand you and your vision and appreciate it.
Yep, and I think the big drawback, if there is one, is people don't know what you do. People don't appreciate some people find it difficult to imagine and mightn't come and spend their money with me because they don't know how beneficial it can be for them and how fulfilling. The end result isn't just what you put on your back, it's how you feel about yourself. I had a fellow who recently told me that he's retired now, but he was the treasurer of New South Wales. And he told me, John, you know, I've been making for him since he went into politics. And he said to me, you wouldn't think so, but I'm actually a very shy person. It's very hard for me to get up and talk in front of people and do this and that, unless I'm wearing something you've made me. He said,
Wow.
It's like a suit of armour.
That's amazing.
And I can face the world.
I love that.
And he was the treasurer of New South Wales.
That's so powerful, isn't it? Yeah.
So very exciting. But I get to meet so many people too.
Right.
I've made things for unusual people, like the Greek Orthodox Archbishop of New York.
What does he wear?
He wore a black cashmere full-length overcoat. Or the head of the Chamber of Commerce in Nagoya.
Okay.
You know, Nagoya is actually a sister city, Sydney. And he was on some trade thing. And some unusual people.
What did he wear? What did he ask for?
Very Japanese, very traditional.
Right.
Yeah. Straight up and down.
And would he come to visit you? Would that be on trips?
Yes,
Yeah.
he'd be here visiting on business. Another fellow, a very unusual one, very unusual, where he came from originally I really don't know, but he used to come and he was Russian. He was in a hurry, but he was also a Russian national. He and his wife used to come to Sydney every 2 or 3 years and stay under the Harbour Bridge in the hotel there, the Hyatt, and go shopping in Double Bay, and they'd come for a month or so for their annual holidays. And he came in to see me. It ended up, he didn't speak English, but he had an interpreter. He was the captain of a Russian nuclear submarine, retired, and he was now a part of the Kremlin. He was in the Defence Department of the Kremlin, on the naval side. And he just wanted the best. He said, I want nothing Italian, very specific. I want it blue, I want the best fabric you can get, and blah, blah, blah. And I ended up finding I don't know if you know about fabrics, and they call things like Super 100s and Super 150s. I found the blue that was a Super 250, like unheard of.
Tell me about the Super 250. That's the finest weave?
Even today you couldn't find it. It's the fineness of each individual hair.
Wow.
And it's something like 1 pound of wool joined together would stretch out 250 kilometres.
That's amazing.
All right, now, give you an idea, most commercial suits would be made of a wool, if it was a pure wool, of around, it always used to be about Super 60s or 70s when I first started, or 80s. That was quite fine. Then it went up to 100s, 120 these days is not unusual. Then 150 is considered very good. 160, 180, 200 still pretty rare.
Right.
Super 210s, but this was a Super 150, and I'm talking about 15 years ago,
Right.
20 years ago. I think it was around $19,000, when a suit in those days might have been $5,000.
Right.
So
He wasn't thinking about that price.
it wasn't money, it was just what he wanted. Went away very happy.
And what's the most eclectic customer you've ever had?
The most
Eclectic.
eclectic.
Eclectic suit.
I have a wonderful story for you. I won't use names, but there was a very well-known, well-regarded political journalist in Canberra. Not such an old man at the time, and middle-aged, young to middle-aged, maybe in his late 30s or something. And he'd been to his doctor, and the doctor had told him, do you know that this side of your face is different to that? You know, if you stand in front of a mirror and put up a thing, that you actually look different one side to the other.
Yeah, we've all got our good side.
We all have,
side.
we've all got this and that.
Yeah.
And so he took that on board, came to me for the first time and said, I'm different on the left to the right. I said, yes, I understand that. He said, well, I want to dress that way. So he ordered a suit, a two-piece suit. It was a green tweed with a big orange check through it, a bit like Noddy and Big Ears, you know. Very country, very tweedy. And I said, well, that's definitely individual, but what are we going to do about your this side and that? And he said, well, you tell me, how can we make it different? So I ended up making him a suit. The trousers had a narrow leg on one side, a wide leg on the other side, plain bottom on one, cuffs on the other, a slanted pocket on one, a straight pocket on the other, one hip pocket, etc. A pleat on one side and plain on the other. And the jacket was a 2-button jacket on one side, 3-button on the other side, one side vent, one centre vent, a 3-button cuff, a 4-button cuff, you know, elbow patches, this or that, you know, totally different lining.
Amazing.
And the whole thing just was 2 coats, one side and the other.
Right.
And he was amazed. And that was probably one of the most eclectic things I've ever made.
And what was it like for you? I mean, because you're so creative.
I was only young
Did
at
you
the
love
time.
it? Oh, right.
I was probably in my 20s, late 20s at that stage, early 30s maybe. But bold enough to take on the challenge.
And had the creativity and the vision to push it to its
limit.
Yeah. Do you think you would do that now?
Absolutely.
If a customer came in, you would?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd have more creative ways of doing it now.
Right.
I'd use different fabrics and
Different shapes, maybe.
yeah, shapes. Flat on one side, prominent on
Big
the other.
shoulders.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah.
You know, a rope sleeve and a flat sleeve head. And you can do all sorts of things. Yeah.
Like you say, there's no limit to creativity. And when
Imagination and creativity.
And skill. You've got to have the skill.
You have to be able to do it
Yeah.
and not be scared of it. I love that. That's my passion. That's part of my passion is, you know, this is obviously a one-off for one person in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually have just made recently a very special suit for a very good client come friend. No names again, but he has Parkinson's and doesn't know how long he has to go. And he wanted to leave a legacy. Now, part of the legacy was highlighting bespoke tailoring. And he wanted some way to express that. So I came up with the concept of getting the best fabric I could, which is called vicuña, from the Andes. It grown above 4,000 metres, 12,000 feet. Very rare. It's the most expensive natural fibre in the world. Very rare. And it was a banned export from Peru for many years. And I was able to obtain some fleece, and I had it spun actually spun in Italy and woven in Huddersfield, in England, by Dormeuil.
Oh.
And it was a pure vicuña worsted suiting, lightweight. So
they made it
and then
from the beginning.
well, what happened was I decided to make a film showing the tailor's art and expressing what he was about, his wanting to work with me to help to promote bespoke and sustainability, all sorts of things. And so a good filmmaker friend of mine, Priya Willingham, took it on, very excited about it, and the three of us have been working for 3 years on it, and Priya's filmmaker. And then right through the whole process of measuring, cutting the pattern, cutting the cloth, receiving the cloth, cutting the cloth. We flew over to Huddersfield for the weaving and interviewing the old boys who were working in the old factory and all that. And it's a whole film of the whole process, from shearing to delivering the suit. You know, for his wife saying, "Oh, I know this is just a folly, but what am I to say? I'm not the one with Parkinson's."
And so what was his passionate about showing that story from the making to the...
He wanted in some way to uphold the whole concept of one-off for one person, sustainability, throwaway versus handmade, you know, the whole quality thing. He wanted in some way to express that in the strongest way possible. So I came up with the concept of making this very, very, very special thing. And we're still working on the film. We haven't quite finished yet.
We're going to get it out.
We need a bit of money to put into the editing and music, but we're making it as a feature film for like Cannes film festivals and sort of thing, but also doing a shorter version as a, say, Netflix or some sort of documentary.
I think it's such an important story to tell, and that's something that I'm very passionate about, as you know. And
yes, I've had a couple of clients who've thought exactly the same and have put money into it.
Okay.
Like I'd say to one day I was having lunch with one guy from Melbourne, and I said, "Oh, we have to go over to England to film this weaving." And he said, "So what's the problem?" And I said, "Well, we haven't got the 20,000 we need." He said, "It'll be in your account this afternoon." I went to my account, there it was, booked a ticket the next day. Done.
I mean, that gives so much...
Well, I said to him...
Doesn't it, that people appreciate this?
Well, I said to him, "Well, we'll have to write you into the, you know, if it's a profit or something." And he said, "John, don't you know how to accept a present? It's a gift. I don't want anything. I just want you to survive." And that's, makes me almost weep when I think of one client who really wanted us to survive. It's in my book. I've got a book called Making the Cut, which is a family, 5-generation family book. And the story's in there, but he wanted us to survive. And it's the largest order I'd ever received from a client. Newish client. I'd made a few things for him, but he was a businessman in Sydney. I won't go into names and types of things, but business, wealthy. And he came along one time and said, "John, you don't know it, but in a few months we're going to be in a very difficult economic situation." And it was the recession of the end of the 70s. And he was forewarning that. And he said, "We, your clients, want you to be here for us when the difficult economic time is done." So over 3 days, he ordered 75 suits, 3-piece suits, each with long socks and sock suspenders and braces. He had 25 lightweight, 25 medium and 25 heavyweights. Paid me 30,000 deposit back in those early days.
Right, which the equivalent now, I can't imagine.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
The order was $250,000, 250,000.
Right.
Today it'd be a couple of
Way
million.
beyond that, yeah.
And he said, "I don't want them now. When you start to get quiet, just put 1 or 2 a week in for me." And that saw me through that whole time. He said, "We, your clients, want you to be here when this recession is finished, so you can be there to look after us."
Wow. Like, we
That's-
never
that's-
expect that to...
That's the sort of thing I'm talking about.
Mind-blowing.
Some people's appreciation of what you do and what you do for them, and working together to allow survival. It almost felt like, you know, the old paintings, the Medicis, and employing a tradesperson or an artist to paint a ceiling, and rather than paying them, you kept them and you paid their rent and food, and it's a bit like that.
Understanding the value and experiencing the value, right?
And bringing other people in. And it was over $250,000 back then. I'm talking about the 70s. It was a lot of money. And it kept me going over that whole time.
And had you made many suits for him prior, or was it
No.
solely his...
Well, he had 75 suits then.
Yeah.
He was 76 years old.
Right.
76. Had 2 Rolls Royces. And he said, you've always got to have 2 Rolls Royces because one's always in the garage being fixed. One was a convertible and it's always leaking.
You've got to have these options, right?
Yeah. So he looked after me and we became good mates. But then when I finished, he went off on another tangent and I never saw him again. Or a little bit socially, but no.
So who knows what...
But if you've got 75 suits in your wardrobe, you don't need too much more.
Yeah, right. And if you can afford to put that money in that way, I mean, it was more about, I don't know, just having fun with it sounds like, and supporting you and his value for you, like you said.
Sustainability, yes. It was a great thing for him to do, and
I can't imagine what that would have meant to you during those times.
Saved my life.
Gee.
That was a very difficult time in the late 70s, a big recession. Would have been hard to survive in a small business like mine.
And do you think, like you were saying before, it's about what you do is as much about relationships as the quality pieces that you give?
One-on-one.
Do you think that's what has taken you through all those ups and downs?
Absolutely.
In business?
And being able to listen and being able to turn dreams into realities. Start with nothing and achieve something that's desired by a client. First of all, getting out of them what they want, really want, and then coming up with the product, fabrics and types of things, and then the concept of the design and fitting the body the way that they want it to be fitted.
And that's the experience. When you talk about, some people don't understand what it is, this whole process. If you're someone who buys clothing just from a regular retail store, it's something you can't even imagine, can you? If you haven't experienced that, maybe not it's about the process, but...
I've had to learn to express the whys and someone wants something but they don't know what they want. They might know what they wanted to achieve, but not what it looks like. So
how do you do that? How do you draw that out of them?
I'm using similes by being able to express and come up with fabrics that excite them or fit into their mould of conservatism, or how to do something very acceptable and conservative in society, but give it a little twist, which is their thing.
Because they're still after that uniqueness.
Yeah,
right?
It might be something inside, it might be the colour of an undercollar, it could be anything. Might be a photo of their wife or kid or dog. Yeah. So all these things are very important. Yeah. It's turning dreams into reality. That's my life. Turning dream into reality. And understanding what the person wants and knowing that anything is possible.
So now that you've handed the business over and you've seen, changes in the way that people approach Bespoke and what they appreciate, where do you see the future of Bespoke and tailoring and
our business?
And the business?
Right. My time in my work has been a time of great change in clothing in the world. Fashion, movies, television, it's the whole computers, people's opportunity to learn via podcasts and films, all those things. That it's just been an enormous change. So it's been very interesting. And I was very fortunate that about 12 years ago, when I was approached by a young man, Sam Hazelton, who was just finishing some studies in fashion design, left school, did a fashion design course, went to New Zealand, did a a few, something over there to do with fashion, and then came back here and was looking for work experience. He asked me whether I had any work experience for him, and I said, well, no, I haven't, but I am looking for a protege, if you'd like a full-time job. And so he jumped at that, and he's been with me for 12 years, and very able, very passionate, very creative and sensible, intelligent. And we became good friends, and I taught him what I know, but he also learnt from other places, other tailors, an old Jewish man, and a few others that read books and studied a lot. So it came time when I got into my mid-70s that I should pull back and smell the roses a bit, so to speak, drink the right champagne. And then Sam was able to come to the fore and has taken over the business, the running of the business, and I'm just looking after a few individuals who want me in particular, or want, a relationship to continue. But all the new things and everything in the past, apart from that, is in Sam's court. And it's been a thing down through history with our company over the 4 generations that each retiring generation leaves the business alone when they retire, and never visits without being invited, and never discusses business unless asked. And so I said to Sam, I won't come here unless I'm welcome. And I won't talk about things unless you want to bring them up. And it's up to you. I've shared what I have experienced in my life. If you want to take that and run with it, that's good. If you want to change it, you change it. If you want to turn this into a jean shop, that's the future, well, you do it.
Right.
Not me to retire and then try and reign from the grave. Your business is your business. And so that's what he's doing, and there's a new premises he's got here, and a lot of the old clients have moved over and taken on his abilities and his creativity, and I'm only too pleased that I've been able to transition in that way. So there's plenty for me to experience yet in life, and to look after a few people that I've chosen. And
keep your passion going for what you're doing.
Yeah, and enough to fulfil the creative side that might need to come out.
It has to come out sometimes, doesn't it?
But also later on in life, a bit later in life, to spend a bit more time maybe cooking and entertaining and sharing, enjoying. Not that life hasn't thus far been a great joy, which it has. Fraught with problems and things, but mixed in with a lot of joy. And hope for the future. I believe there'll always be people who want something better or something different, or the ultimate in something, and that will continue to bolster trades like bespoke tailoring. Maybe it'll go ahead in slightly different forms, different ways, but I think there'll always be that appreciation for the best you can do.
So you see it's going to have that evolution, that it won't be exactly maybe a simplifying of what it was once?
I just perform differently.
Yeah.
It'll still be very meaningful for the recipient, but maybe when I first started, it used to be, the old rule was 16 stitches to the inch.
Right.
Well, it mightn't be quite that these days, but maybe it doesn't matter. As long as you're fulfilling dreams and helping people to express themselves and taking care of that creative side of life.
It's I mean, it's beautiful that you have that vision and that kind of sense of detachment, I guess, because when you're done a craft, been involved with a craft for so long, and it's been your life and it's been your passion, to think that that may not, as a craft in itself continue in that way, you need a sense of detachment in that, I think, because I know.
I'm sure that my grandfather, when he started, back in 18 whatever, learning from his father, when he handed over to my father, things would have been quite different between his beginning and his end.
Yeah.
And I think it was very wise of him to say, hands off, you do it your way. You've got to go into the future. Maybe my vision of the future is not the way the world's going. I hand it over with a clean heart. I've done a bit of speaking. I've been, talked to groups like Rotary clubs and all about tailoring and bespoke and everything, and companies and sort of what's it called when you tell your experiences and you encourage people, and motivational type stuff. I'm very used to talking, as you may have been aware, but I think there's a story to be told, and people who are interested in hearing. So.
Oh, I'm sure, and I'm sure people would be so wanting to hear from you, knowing all of your experience, all of your everything you've done, and also the incredible honour that you had with your OAM, Order of Australia. I mean, that's such a special recognition.
It is very special, but I see it not only of my passion for it, but it's also a generational thing. I received that sort of award on behalf of my father and grandfather and the founder, and just pleased that someone's thought to put the name up and recognise the value of it.
Yeah. And what was that like for you, that moment when you heard that you were going to receive that?
No.
What were you doing when you?
A bit of disbelief. But I'm a tailor. You don't hear of tradespeople getting.
Right.
What painter have you heard of that? A house painter. You would, or a carpenter. You don't hear about tradespeople who receive those sorts of honours. But so I'm very thankful, grateful.
The Artisans of Fashion Podcast, empowering artisans, preserving traditions, and reviving beauty. If you want to be a part of the Artisans of Fashion movement, please spread the word and tell your friends. We would also love to hear from you. Tell us about the artisans that you have found around the world. Please get in touch via the email or link provided in the show notes. Thank you for listening to the Artisans of Fashion Podcast, empowering artisans, preserving traditions, and reviving beauty.